Pastor Don. And thank you for opening this beautiful church to us. It's absolutely packed, overflow rooms, the upstairs there. And there's so many beautiful things to do on this gorgeous summer night. For you to choose to be here shows your commitment to ideas, including the idea of freedom. And I know that this is not an officially Christian event. Rebel News is not officially a Christian media organization, but the Christian belief that there's something higher than a politician in life was one of the reasons that churches often were the freedom front line during the civil liberties inferno of the last 3 years. And I know that the Seventh-day Adventists, I used to work for Gerald Chippier, who was one of the freedom lawyers for the Seventh-day Adventists. I learned so much from him. And one of my favorite things, speaking as a Jew, about the Adventists is that they don't just fight for their own freedom. The community fights for freedom of religion for all, because there's a concept in law called precedent. Another way of saying is, what comes around goes around. And the Seventh-day Adventists are there for everyone, including going to court for the B'nai B'rith, for the Jews. And it reminds me of the Holocaust memorial in Jerusalem called Yad Vashem. And you go through this horrific museum and memorial, but then you come outside to this garden of righteous Gentiles. And there were righteous Gentiles who, at risk to themselves, saved Jews. I mean, the movie Oscar Schindler is an example of that. And surely when churches across Canada were persecuted, shut down, in one case in Edmonton, the Grace Life Church, positively expropriated by police, surely it behooves Canadians of every religion and of no religion to stand up for the Christians. And I'm very proud that the real defiant in a principled way were often church leaders. And I'll never forget that. So it's very fitting to be in the church to talk about freedom, and I thank you for opening your doors to us. I want to be mindful of the clock because you're not here to hear from me. You're here to hear from Tamara Lich. But maybe let me set the scene for 5 minutes before I call her to the front. You know, it was the most dramatic rescission and infringement on our civil liberties in a generation. And none of our institutions worked. The opposition leaders didn't oppose. All the major parties agreed. The media, who are normally skeptical of big business and big government, became cheerleaders, even propagandists. The courts, who for years had said that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms was the highest thing, didn't seem to give any meaning to it. In fact, not a single substantive lockdown measure to this day has been overturned. Maybe one small example in Alberta recently. But for example, in Montreal, they had curfews. Whether you were jabbed or not, sick or not, from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., a curfew, like you're in prison. The words we used, lockdown, curfew, were words that had, until that point, been associated with prisons. Where were the law professors? Where were the judges? Where were the colleges of physicians and surgeons? They were silencing doctors who were giving a second opinion. Every single institution failed at once. And there was a plan to it because it was a narrative everyone agrees. There was an attempt to create a false consciousness of unanimity, so that if you objected, if you felt uncomfortable about having your body jabbed with a substance that you didn't know about and you didn't want, a disease so dangerous it often had no symptoms, you had to be tested to know if you had it. A vaccine so promising you had to be threatened to take it or bribed. You know, it was the worst of times. And there was a false unanimity. It was a form of gaslighting. As the great liberal comedian Jimmy Dore says, we used to call doing your own research, we used to just call that reading. Looks like we got ourselves a reader here. And Jimmy Dore would say, he'd say, don't you know everything's already been read? He would say, you go to buy a car, well, don't read up on it. Listen to the salesman, he's the expert. We would never apply that in any other field of life, but there was a false unanimity designed to make you doubt yourself. And there's a natural human instinct. It's not just a human instinct, it's in all life forms, really, to stay with the herd for protection. If you're with the mass of people, you really can't go that wrong, because you'll be with everyone else, and maybe they're right, and best not to stand up, because the nail that sticks out is the one that gets hammered. It was a psychological operation to make you doubt yourself, to make you think you were the only one who felt the world was mad, and therefore it was actually you who was mad, not the world. And then something astonishing happened. Organic, authentic, unplanned. In a way, a beautiful chaos that came together. I'm talking about maybe the most trustworthy people in society, the most uncorruptible people in society, deciding that maybe if it was to be done, it was up to them. I'm talking about the people who never complained during the lockdowns, the people who never stopped going to work, not the Zoom class, the laptop class, the staycation class that loved it. I'm talking about the people who brought you your food on Skip the Dishes and DoorDash. I'm talking about the Amazon truck drivers. I'm talking about truck drivers. Perhaps the most independent-minded people out there often have their own rig, time to drive, time to think, time to contemplate the news, often owner-operators. And by the way, to compel them to take a jab makes no sense other than lighthouse keepers. Is there anyone in society more isolated than a truck driver? And so when these truck drivers spontaneously said, if it's to be, it's up to me, it's not up to you to save the world, but neither are you free to do nothing. These truckers took it upon themselves, and they just started to muster. And what a beautiful sight it was. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. And others who weren't truckers joined in too. And I believe that 1 million Canadians either participated or came out to the side of the road just to witness it, because they learned that they could no longer believe what they saw through their screens, through their phone, through their TV, through the nightly propaganda. They wanted to see something real with their own eyes. On overpasses, even in the 401 highway in Toronto, people wanted to see these truckers from the West, and they saw them, and crowdfunders came to support them, but then GoFundMe shut that down. Another crowdfunding engine called Give, Send, Go, but that was stopped by a judge. But it didn't stop the truckers, because you see, they weren't doing it for the money. They weren't professional protesters, which is what we normally see. These were individual people who, at their own cost, at their own risk, did this. The gravest civil liberties violation in a generation was met by the greatest authentic, populist, grassroots freedom movement of every race, of every religion, of every background. It was truly beautiful. I went to Ottawa. Oh my God, it was cold. And it felt like a festival. It felt like I saw people spontaneously singing the anthem and waving flags, unironically, as opposed to the politicians' calculated way of doing so. It was the truckers. Orwell would say it's the proles that saved us, the working class people, not the intellectual yet idiot class. It was severely normal men and women who had simply had enough. The most peaceful protest movement in Canadian history, the only protest movement that left the city cleaner, the streets cleaner than when they arrived. And who led that? Well, in a way, it was leaderless, which is why it couldn't be stopped and why it was so credible. I can tell you 10 ways a lawyer or a judge or a politician or a journalist can be corrupted, but I can't think of a way a trucker could be corrupted. And we all knew that, and we all sensed it, and it was so very real. And these people were motivated truly by a love of the country and what they felt was being stolen by them. So who would lead a leaderless group? Well, someone who captured the spirit of that group. And wouldn't you know it, how could it be the most unlikely leader? I say she's 5 foot and nothing. A grandma from Medicine Hat, Alberta. I tell you, I didn't see that coming. And neither did Justin Trudeau. And she met calumnies with grace, and she met lies with a smile, and she met hate with love. And I think that's what enraged the other side. And her messages were one of calm and be your best. You're better than that. You're better than them. Rise up. And of course she had to be arrested. And of course she had to be jailed for 49 days on an incitement of mischief case. Has anyone in history been jailed for mischief before? That's like someone that's like a kid spray painting something on the wall and running away. That's what 49 days in prison, much of it in solitary confinement. I tell you, put me in prison for 49 days, I'm coming out sour. But Tamara Lich came out more resolved, not bitter. It's actually amazing. I've had the great pleasure of getting to know her a little bit over the last few months, and it is a pleasure and an honor for Rebel News to be the publisher of her book. It's the very day it was released, and I'll call her up to the stage in a moment, don't worry. The very day the book was released, in fact, we weren't even ready to release it. It just sort of popped up on Amazon. We didn't even tell anyone, really. And it went to #1 bestseller in Canada in its first day. I found that very heartening because it was a year after the events in question. And that tells me that people still care, people still remember, people want to hear the other side of the story, people want to hear the correct version of history. They do not trust the official narrative by the regime media. They want to know. I learned things in that book that I didn't know, and I thought I was following things carefully. And let me tell you this. The major newspapers of this country, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, the National Post, the CBC website, they all have books sections. They all have book reviews. There's a newspaper, the Literary Review of Canada. There's a whole book industry, and yet I have yet to see a single review of the book. The most interesting woman in the most interesting news story of the year. It's a #1 bestseller, and you won't even mention it. Even to condemn it, even to rip it up, to say it's a terrible book, it's very poorly written, don't waste your money on it or your time. They won't even acknowledge its existence, because to do so is to acknowledge there's another side to the story, and it would be to direct people outside of the false consciousness. Let me close with, I'm going to call Tamara up in about 60 seconds, but let me close with what I think is going to happen, because Rebel News has published the book. It's a great honor for us to do so, and Tamara has been tirelessly touring across this country. I had the pleasure of being in several sold-out events with her. What a play in Toronto and Aylmer, Ontario. Just wonderful. It's great to be here in beautiful BC. My train of thought, forgive me. The book is being published by Rebel News, but there's something else that's going on, and it's what Pastor Don referred to, and that's what the donations. Tamara has not yet had her trial. And so a cousin organization of ours called the Democracy Fund, a registered Canadian charity with its own board of directors and its own staff, is representing or crowdfunding of lawyers. I've had the pleasure of meeting Lawrence Greenspan, the lead lawyer. He's sharp. That trial begins in less than a month. Scheduled for about a month, 2 months, for a mischief trial. And what does that tell you? The process is the punishment. Trial, Tamara has to go and sit down with the lawyers and go through every single detail meticulously. Who has time for that? Who can change their process itself is the punishment. This, after already serving 49 days hard time, I am very arrested with this. You do not have a 2-month trial for incitement of mischief. You have a 2-hour trial, maybe a 2-day trial. You have a 2-month trial if the purpose of the trial is not actually the criminal code, but rather the criminalization of peaceful political dissent. You have a 2-month trial if your purpose is not to find out if a certain woman is guilty or not guilty. An entire peaceful political movement as a criminal movement. The whole purpose of a 2-month trial. Convoy itself on trial. And a would not only, in my mind, be a legal travesty, but it would be a anyone who dissented from the lockdowns, from the forced vax, from the invocation of a form of martial law called the Emergencies Act, that is their true goal, and also to one. On the contrary, though, if Tamara acquit themselves of the charge, can vindicate, can validate, can retroactively a peaceful, resonant will it be? How much more historical it will be? That is what is on trial in 1 month's time in Ottawa. The history and how it will be written is in the air, as well as one woman's freedom. And so, as Pastor Don so generously said, the church will match the donations which will go to the Democracy Fund crowdfund for Tamara Lich. Without further ado, will you join with me in welcoming an outstanding Canadian and a true citizen, a woman I am proud to call my friend.
Wow, thank you. You guys are going to give me a big head. But thank you so much for such a warm welcome. Dwayne and I got into BC a few days ago and have just had the warmest welcome I could have ever imagined. Thank you. I've never really spent a lot of time in BC. Once on a drilling rig up at Tumbler Ridge, and I made it as far as a Soyuz one year camping with my daughter. So this has been a real treat for us, and I just want to thank everyone for the warm welcome. Thank Pastor Don and everyone here for putting this fabulous event on, of course. Thank you. And thank you for having me, of course. And obviously, Rebel News. I mean, I've personally been a fan of Rebel News for a number of years, primarily because they tell the truth and they don't take money from the government. So they're already, they're already ahead in my books. But I think what the convoy showed for sure, or one of the things that it really exposed was our mainstream media. And so it was organizations like Rebel News and True North and Western Standard and independent news media that really got up and had their moment to shine, which is great for them. And it's really too bad for our mainstream media because they wasted a really great opportunity to unify this country, and they wasted it. So thank you to organizations just like Rebel News for getting the truth out there, getting on the ground, you know. Everyone in Ottawa was being told we were terrorists and insurrectionists, and, you know, they had their reporters on the ground, and I think they were all okay. And also to Rebel News for helping me publish my book, and they have made it such a great experience for me. Obviously, the writing of it was quite therapeutic, and you know, to go back and relive some things, and they just made it a real seamless experience. And I'm really proud of the book that we've put out. There's a whole lot of truth in there, and what we tried to do was to dispel all the myths. You know, we were accused of being racists. We were accused of being misogynists. We were accused of being arsonists. We were accused of being infiltrated by the Russians. That was my personal favorite. You know, all this nonsense. And like Ezra was alluding to, you know, again, they just wasted this great opportunity. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I hear this is great water here. That's what I heard. Ah. No, that's great. Where was I? Lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, the Russians. yeah, that's right. And it's so funny when that came on my phone, because we were still driving across Ottawa, and I looked at Chris and I was like, do I even know any Russians? Oh, too funny. But you know, it goes to show you what lengths that they will go to lie to you. And that's what they've been doing. I've had my eyes open for a few years now, and massively, obviously, as a result of this experience. And I had a hard time trusting the mainstream media, but I was pretty sure they were gonna do that. I was prepared for them to come out and call me a racist. And oddly enough, you know, I am a Métis and Scottish. So, yeah, right? And as I talk about in my book, ironically, if I would have been standing for Black Lives Matter or a trans movement or an LGBTQ movement, and I claimed to be Métis, they would be parading me around Canada right now. Right? But because I was a part of something that the Liberal government didn't specifically believe in, they actually questioned my heritage. So, you know, that shows you kind of where we're at. But I think there's hope. A lot of people ask me that. What do you see next? And I know it can be overwhelming some days, especially in BC. You guys are getting hit really hard out here, you know? I thought some things out, but what I see, I think it was about in your legislature, your provincial legislature, your MLAs had a vote to decide to denounce the Freedom Convoy for no particular reason. They weren't making a new law or anything. They just decided they needed to have a vote to denounce the Freedom. So one of your MLA. Yes. So I wish you all luck, and we have lots of room in Alberta, and we'd love to have you. I just want to talk for a minute too about, you know, my experience, because we're in a church. And I've always been a very spiritual person, and that I follow too. But there's nobody in this movement, whether they are believers or not believers, that will deny that there was something that was guiding us and protecting us this whole way. Too many coincidences happen. And first and foremost, Chris Barber led that convoy across Canada in January without a single accident. Nobody was hurt, there was no accidents, and I think that's a miracle. And so what this whole experience has done for me too is to really deepen my faith, and I think it was a divine experience, and it's still happening. You know, there's still people that I'm meeting or that come into my life, you know, right when you need something, you know, and somebody just shows up, and I just feel like I'm so blessed, even though a lot of people might think that sounds ridiculous after what I've been through. But like Ezra said, I mean, jail wasn't fun. And I have to give my husband in the back there so much credit. Totally safe, getting 3 meals a day, and my husband was at home. My daughters were at their homes, and they had to just carry on and try and live their life like, you know, nothing was happening. And so I give them a lot of credit for their strength. He's in the back.
Have him come up here.
Come on up, Dwayne. Everyone, my husband, Dwayne. Dwayne. We're the dream team. So as Ezra was saying too, we do have a criminal trial coming up. Chris Barber and I are co-accused, and our trial starts on September the 5th. And it will be concluding sometime in November. Again, figure that one out for a mischief charge. And it was funny, when I was originally arrested, I was charged with counseling to commit mischief, just one charge. And then I think they realized later on that you can't really be found guilty of a crime that didn't happen, so they had to add the rest of the charges after that. Me. So we do have we still have a big fight against again, you know, coming up, and but I feel very confident and I feel very positive, and I'm looking at this as an opportunity to get some more evidence out and to get some more truth out. And I think it's coming, you know. I think, well, I saw the people even that stood up here when the pastor asked, you know, how many of you woke up during all of this? And I've met so many people that have, and I just think that's so wonderful. So keep talking to your friends, keep talking to your family, you know, because we need their support and we need them on our side, and I do think we're winning. To go back to what I was saying before, we're being hit by so many things right now, and I think one of the unintended consequences of the convoy was we scared the heck out of them, and they're panicking. Yeah. So, yes. And what I know about panicking is that you make mistakes and you screw up, and I think it's just a matter of time. And I'm not giving up till my last breath. What I'm seeing of this country is remarkable, and not just the landscape. We have the most beautiful country in the world, but it is truly you guys, it is you people. And you know, we traveled across Canada and everyone told us how we were giving them hope, and they felt like, you know, they had pride in their country again. But the truth of the matter is that you guys were giving us hope. We didn't know what to expect when we left. And certainly, you know, Chris and I talked a lot about, we thought as we got farther east, we expected the crowds to go away, because what we've heard from the mainstream media is that Eastern Canada hates us. And they think Albertans are a bunch of redneck hillbillies and they don't want our dirty oil, you know. But I found out really quickly that that was a lie. And it's always been a lie. And the Québécois and the Albertans, I mean, that was, for me, one of the most profound experiences that happened out there. That one photo with the flags, you know, it was amazing. And just a show of, we are Canadians. And the convoy showed us that it doesn't matter what color your skin is, it doesn't matter what God you worship, it doesn't matter who you love, what your income bracket is, or where you live. We were Canadians, proudly Canadians. And it's worth fighting for. It's worth fighting for. So I'll wrap it up, because I could probably stand up here and talk all night. I think are we doing a question and answer this evening? Okay, I wasn't sure if we were or not. Again, thank you for having me. I know Ezra alluded to the Democracy Fund, who is graciously helping me to fund my case. My criminal lawyer and his team are estimating the trial is going to be about $300,000. That's before they've now added some more dates to our trial. And that's called lawfare. Because what they want us to do is to just give up and plead guilty and walk away because we can't afford it. And I'm going to tell you, I don't have $300,000. And I consider myself a very low maintenance woman, and I'm not all that in a bag of chips, but what I will say is the outcome of this trial is going to affect every single one of you. Not just the other people from the convoy that were charged and have tried. Will affect every freedom-loving Canadian going forward. And so that's why it's so important, and I'm so grateful for it. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm so proud that Tamara is fighting for everyone in this country. When people were hiding from their conscience, she embraced hers. Let's take 3 questions, and then I will ask you for help. Not for me, not for Rebel News, but for Tamara's court case. In fact, why don't we do that now? Do we have the bucket brigade? I'm not sure if we have a bucket brigade in effect, but let me just say a quick word. It's true, a trial like this costs $300,000, and you might be thinking, how is that even possible? There's a few ways it's not just possible, but that's actually reasonable. Because it's not just one lawyer, it's a law firm. It's not just the 2 months of trial, it's the preliminary skirmishes all along. It's the sitting down with Tamara and literally going through TikTok minute by minute and answering and preparing for anything from the other side. And I'm afraid that it will at least be $300,000. But I think that no rational person would pay $300,000. They would just cut a plea bargain and make it go away. Even if you had $300,000, a poor person couldn't do it, and even a very wealthy person wouldn't. The only way it makes sense is if hundreds of ordinary people chip in 10, 20, 30 bucks. If you donate, this money will go to the Democracy Fund, which is a registered Canadian charity. So in fact, if you put a check in, you will get a charitable tax receipt. Thank you for making this pitch. I ask for it not for myself, and not even for Tamara, but so that we can fight and beat the government in court. We absolutely must beat them. And I know that the Democracy Fund has had an excellent success track record at beating the government. You've probably heard about some of those cases. In fact, the Democracy Fund has represented a number of churches successfully, I'm proud to say. All right, thank you for letting me make that pitch, and Pastor Don, thanks. Let's take 3 questions, and please keep the questions brief. We might even be able to jam in a few more. So the gentleman here, and then we'll go to the gentleman in the back. Please keep it brief.
Well, I think we have already 300,000 truck drivers in this Canada. Why not having 300,000 people, including Canadian truck drivers, signing for Tamara Lich?
Wow.
In order to expose the system.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more, thank you. If you want to learn more, you can go to thedemocracyfund.ca, and you can learn about his charitable status. The gentleman in the back, go ahead.
Hi. No, wait. My screen. Hi, I'm really concerned for Alberta because all Danielle Smith seems all good on the top. I'm wondering about the $100 million that they got awarded for 15-minute cities. I'm really worried about that because it's really going to show Danielle Smith's true colors.
Well, I don't know about that $1 million payment, so I can't really speak to it.
She won a contest from the world, and the WEF, Edmonton won that prize, $100 million to build bicycle lanes.
Let's keep it moving. Thank you for your point. And Pastor Don, I'll let you select the speakers. I'll let you go around with the mic.
Let's maybe, you said 3.
You know what? I think that we're coming along pretty quick. Why don't we take a few more?
Yeah.
If people have the interest, and then why don't we take questions for maybe 10 more minutes, and then Tamara, if you'd be willing just to finish signing a few
Yes,
books
of
for
course,
the
yeah.
stragglers. So
Yeah.
I think these are moving along, and I think people are still attentive, if I'm not mistaken. And there's some questions I see down here.
Sure.
Maybe try to focus your questions on something that Tamara could answer.
Yeah.
Hi, Tamara. I'm Alan. Thanks for coming to White Rock. It's a real honor to be here. I have a question. I only actually met you in the sense of learned about you the morning that you were being arrested. And I was so touched, and I'm still so touched, because you had said something about Justin Trudeau and how he also has children.
Yes.
And you were talking about praying for people or something thereabouts to open your hearts. And I know it's such a, it's like saying Voldemort for anyone who is in that Harry Potter scene, but I'm just saying your heart's so big, I don't think it's a mistake that that's why you're at the center of this. You're at the heart of it. So I don't necessarily have a question. I just wanted to acknowledge that your heart was so big that you were even saying forgive them for even if they do know what they're doing,
Right.
that you were able to do that. So I think I just wanted to thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think one of the reasons why that was so important for me was because I have 3 children, and you can imagine the stuff that they were hearing throughout the convoy about their mother. And as a matter of fact, after I was arrested and I was in jail, my 19-year-old daughter woke up to read that I had hung myself in my prison cell. Yeah. Actually, it was the Vancouver Times that published that, so they're going to buy me a nice cabin in your mountains.
Okay, I think Pastor Don has someone here,
Hi.
and then we'll go back there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Here? Okay, I'm Corrine.
Hi, Corrine.
And I heard, I don't know if it's a rumor or not, that Sophie Gregoire Trudeau had given $25K to the truckers. Is that
I
true?
think that was a joke. I don't know, but there was some donations that came out, like Justin Castro Trudeau was somebody that had donated money. What did Elon Musk? He donated like $42,069. Like there was some that were jokes in there, so I highly doubt it. I do know that Jagmeet Singh's brother-in-law had donated a sum of money, but then he quickly took it back. Yeah.
Go ahead at the back.
Hi, Tamara. Pleasure to meet you. I'm
Thank
Chris
you.
from Vancouver. I just want to echo this gentleman's sentiment earlier. Your absolute humanity throughout all of this has, well, chokes me up every time. So, but anyways, I wanted to ask a question about how you've been on some pretty wide-ranging podcasts over the last little while, such as Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin, and the amount of influence and reach that those 2 gentlemen have, and also the type of people that they are surrounded with or are associated with. Has there been a real uptick in your fundraising for the for your trial after that kind of exposure?
I don't know. I'll have to ask Ezra.
You know what? I haven't been tracking the
Yeah.
timing of
Yeah.
things. I think whenever the URL, and what is the URL?
Theconvoybook.com?
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I forgot it for a second.
It's okay.
It really comes down to mentioning theconvoybook.com. You can do 2 things at that website. You can buy the book, obviously, or you can donate. Make sure you choose which one carefully. You can donate to the Democracy Fund. So I think that it's been wonderful that you've been on these large podcasts, but really it's when people know how to give that it's made the difference.
Yeah, yes.
By the way, the Democracy Fund has, we will be there all the way. When I say we, the Democracy Fund, which is a separate and arm's length organization, this is the most important civil liberties case in Canada. I believe it will be successful at trial, but
Darn straight.
God forbid it isn't. We will appeal this all the way to the Supreme Court, and we'll have your back the whole way.
Thank you.
Should we take one? Oh, go ahead, Tamara. Thank you. So let's take two more questions. I see a hand there and then a hand.
I
Yep.
don't think we answered this question.
Okay, and what was
He was asking about the uptick, if there had been an uptick
Sorry.
in our fundraising. I think so, I would assume so, because we've had such major platforms, but I haven't seen like a report with a timeline on it that would show me that. And I just wanted to touch on your comment about humanity. And I am definitely a believer that love will always win, but the convoy restored my faith in humanity, because that's what we'd lost. You know, so I just wanted to touch on that comment. Thank you.
Yeah, this gentleman.
Hi. Can you hear me?
I can.
My name's Gail.
Hi.
And one thing before I begin is to say that when you asked how many people didn't have anyone, any of their family or friends around, my husband and I were one. And I think everyone here wants to say thank you for giving hope. That was the biggest thing for us. It just made the whole difference in our life, in our world.
Thank you.
And next, I wanted to find out, with this trial coming up, and I understand money is important, so in addition to money, we do, because my fear, along with, I'm going to assert everyone's fear, is that if we, what could we do? How can we support you? In what way?
Pray.
Well, we can do that. So
Pray.
money, prayer, and is there
Because it helps.
Yeah, okay.
I'm telling you, I was in jail and I could feel it helps. It really helps. And that's all I can ask for.
Okay. Well, that you have.
Thank you.
That you have. And one more thing, because I'm also somebody that needs something something else tangible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I writing to people, like who do you write to? So that, I wouldn't even know who I trust to write to.
Yeah.
But I can almost see another convoy of sorts if it's needed for you. I really do. And I don't know what that looks like.
Well, I can't talk about that or I'll go back to jail. But yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Tamara. Love is where the well-being of another is essential to our own. And
Yes.
through you, we have learned that the well-being of all Canadians is essential to us all. Given the suppression of media, the craziness that we've seen of being able to communicate with each other, will there be a successor organization among the truckers and everybody who participated so we can all keep up to date week by week or month to month? Because sadly, I think we're going to need them again.
Yeah. And the farmers, yeah, that's right. Well, what I can tell you is during the convoy in Ottawa, when we were dealing with over $10 million in donations, which was incredible. We formed a board of directors to look at help manage that money and make sure it got to where we needed it to go, and we wanted everything to be open and transparent. So what we're doing with that board right now, well, it's not really a lot, but we're still together. We're putting out a newsletter. We're trying to get the stories of the other truckers out there and other supporters, people like Candy Cito, the lady that was trampled by the horses. Some of the truckers that are out there that still need help, like Chab. There's many, and I'm very fortunate that TDF is helping me, JCCF is helping Chris Barber, and they're also helping some others, but there's still some out there that need help. So, so we're trying to use the newsletter as a vehicle to not just get out their stories, but to get out the evidence that's coming out about vaccines, to get the evidence that came out at the POEC, to get that truth out there. So if you can go to freedomcorp.ca, I think it is, and you can subscribe. There's a Substack newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks. Thanks.
Up at the top.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Tamara and Ezra. I would just like to mention that this events that we've been going through, the COVID exercise from the government and the tyranny that's been taking place since it's happened, and the lockdowns and everything else along with it, is it's a good thing that we come together and we stand up against the government to unite and stop the the tyrannical movement of it and put the government back into the hands of the people. But I must say that with that and the ongoing movement that you have got going here is a good thing, but we must look at what's coming next, whether it is another viral lockdown or more likely a climate lockdown. And that's all the more reason for us to stand up to this government and make our voices known.
Yes.
Thank you.
They might think twice now, though. I know when I was, I spent about 6 weeks in Ottawa for the inquiry. They had the Emergencies Act inquiry. They have to, by legislation, when they invoke it, have an inquiry done within a year. And totally forgot what I was going to say.
Let's make this the last question here, and then we'll give Tamara a short break, and then
I'll answer your question when I remember.
And then we can finish the book
totally
signing.
blank.
So last question, and then I might call on Pastor Don just to say some words just to conclude, if that's a good idea. So let's take one last question, one last answer, and then Pastor Don, and then we'll sign books.
Is on?
There you go.
How long legally can a protest last? Because the natives stood on the railroad tracks. How long can they stay on there where Trudeau just, twiddles his thumbs? And how long did you stay in Ottawa? Because this is a big complaint of people. They see this as an injustice to the people of Ottawa. Or honking horns or whatever. How long can you honk a horn legally? And the key question is, how long is it legal to hold a protest?
That's a great question. In January of 2020 to March of 2020, predominantly First Nations organizations were protesting and burning railroad tracks, blocking railroad tracks. I believe that caused some issues with ferries here. I understand CP Rail, I know, had to lay off 1,000 people. There's been nobody arrested to this day on any of that. And what Justin Trudeau said to them was, when the public asked him, when are you going to do something, his response was, it's important to maintain an open dialogue. So I don't know that there's a limit. What I can tell you is we did have a judge in Ottawa during the convoy that twice said that we were peaceful and could stay as long as we were peaceful. And the last time he said that was 2 days after the Emergencies Act was invoked. Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, that concludes the formal presentation part of the evening. Thank you, Tamara, for coming to beautiful BC. Thank you to everybody. And let me hand things over to our host for the evening, Pastor Don.
Thank you. Thank you so much, honestly. I'm going to just take 5 minutes, and then I will be happy to sign and talk to anybody at the back, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stick around if you need to. I know all of us want a piece of Tamara. Thank you so much for coming. God bless you. Go in peace. Thank you.
Thanks, Pastor. Well, I appreciate that. Well, thanks for hosting and thanks for giving us